Well, it's 2023 and I'm a minute too late to do a boss ranking of Dark Souls 3. I don't think I'm a minute late to this party. Hey, maybe a minute. Look, I love all the Souls games. I do. The amount of hours that I have put into each Souls game is embarrassing, but I love it. I do. Dark Souls 3 is a game that I love, but there are things about it that maybe I don't love as much. I'll put it that way. One of them is sort of the unevenness in the boss quality. I think when the bosses in Dark Souls 3 that I love, holy shit, I think they're great. And then the others are just meh. It's either or for me in Dark Souls 3. Either they're some of the best that they've ever designed, or I just don't give a fuck. Really. Yeah. But here we go. This is sort of my ranking, my personal thoughts, how I rank the bosses based on my preferences of Dark Souls 3. Let's go. Without question, last place, Ancient Wyvern, not a boss. It's like Dragon God in Demon Souls. This is not a boss. The spectacle is cool, and I wish we had seen more of Ancient Wyvern because it looks cool, but I mean the boss is running the arena, and that's not fun or interesting to me at all. It's a one hit. I don't care. I don't give a shit. It's Ancient Wyvern, absolutely last, always gonna be last. Ugh. This whole ass boss is a big ass nope for me. I've never liked it. I never look forward to it if I'm doing an all boss run of Dark Souls 3. Just not my thing. If there's any word that I could use to describe it, it would be generic. It's, okay, here are some little wolves. Okay, here's an NPC. Okay, here's a giant Sith. Alright, okay. And to some degree, I think that if it had just been the giant wolf with multiple phases, that could have been really cool, maybe. But as it is, it just sort of feels like a bunch of ideas without a really strong design or execution. It just, here's some stuff, and I just never liked it at all. I mean, I guess it is kind of fun to fight the big wolf, maybe, but it's just not enough to elevate it in any way. You know, at least it's not the toxic dog rat thing with the little toxic dog rats from Dark Souls 2. I can't remember the name of that fucking boss off the top of my head, but I mean, I guess at the very least, at least it's not that. To set the stage for Wolnir, I remember the first time that I played Dark Souls 3. I got through the catacombs. It was cool. It was what it was, and I remember thinking, all right, I know after going through those double doors after the rope bridge, and okay, we're about to embark on something fucking epic at the end of the catacombs. This is gonna be fucking cool. It's giant ass boss. Here we, and then it was fucking Wolnir, and it was disappointing immediately, because I knew it was okay. So we just have to go smack the fucking bracelets and we're good. And then I died to his fucking fog, and it has never been a good experience. I've always just seen this as a stupid gimmick boss, and I've never had fun fighting Wolnir. It's just been a means to an end. Let's get this shit over with so we can get to Irithyll. Ugh. I've never liked Wolnir. Odds are I never will. Look, I don't know what to say about Old Demon King. Okay, I like Old Demon Ruins in Dark Souls 3. I like the throwback to Dark Souls 1. I think simultaneously it's what is the most interesting thing about Dark Souls 3, and maybe the thing that holds it back the most. I don't know what to say here. Old Demon King is a boss in Dark Souls 3, and you fight Old Demon King as a boss in Dark Souls 3. There you go. That's pretty much all I have to say about this one. He's easy. I guess it's interesting and cool, but okay, that's about all I got for Old Demon King. The one thing that I've always liked about Osiros is the reference to Metal Gear Solid. And it's not even really a connection or anything like that. Osiris just happens to talk about Ocelot, which makes me think of Metal Gear Solid. And I have to think about something when I'm fighting Osiris other than fighting Osiris, because I think it's boring as shit. I don't like Osiris. I've never liked Osiris. You can get fucked up if you're not paying attention. He does hit very hard. But I've never found Osiris particularly difficult or fun to fight. You stay on his crotch, you stay on his ass. His moveset is not particularly compelling. The lore, to me, has always been both kind of vague and uninteresting. But that's just me. I do like that Osiris guards the path to Nameless King and Ancient Wyvern. You have to get through Osiris to get to them and to get to Champion Gundyr. That I like. I think that's cool. But I never have fun fighting Osiris. It's just sort of a means to an end. It's like, okay, let's get through Osiris now and let's go. Now, maybe one day if I learn more about the lore of Osiris, somebody educates me, maybe one day I'll like it more. I don't know that there's a lot to say about Vort. I will say that I do have fun in this fight, with this boss. I do think that it's fun. It's not necessarily what I would call difficult. He just smack his ass, get up there. Easy tells. I mean, the mechanics are not difficult to learn. I think he's very well placed at the beginning of the game. It's a great opening boss, which I think is sort of very nicely presented on this side, knowing that Dancer of the Boreal Valley is on the other side, and much more difficult. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot to say, a lot of complaints about Vort. I mean, Vort is fine. And here you get to see me be absolutely amazing at Dark Souls 3. Go Vort. Okay. This is easily my least favorite thing in the Ringed City DLC, I think. Maybe other than the giant lake of just dumped garbage with Dragonslayer just hanging out in the back. Okay, I got some issues with the Ringed City. But Half-Light is a boss that I think is cool in theory, and it worked well, I guess, in Demon Souls, this idea of having an NPC be the boss, having another player be the boss. But it just I just don't give a shit. It's never worked well for me, and I've always thought it was odd having the Painting Guardians, I think is what they're called, being in here. It just seems unnecessary because Half-Light, as a boss, as you can see, has a wealth of attacks that he's cool on his own. So I don't know. I have really never really liked Half-Light, and to me it's just the thing to get through before Gale. That's it. Somewhere, someone is gonna say, how do you take any damage in the Deacons fight knowing how to actually manage it? Well, not everything is perfect. Sometimes you just get hit. Sometimes you just take damage in Dark Souls. It's just the way of it. Especially when you're greedy and you don't mind to trade hits like me. Sometimes I play like an idiot. Here it is. I will say that I actually do like the Deacons fight. I don't think it's difficult. I don't think it's challenging or anything. But I do like the mechanic of it. I like the presentation. I do think it's fun. I've never been bored or frustrated by having to deal with it. And even though it's not a one-to-one comparison here, it seems like an improvement over the Congregation in Dark Souls 2. Not saying much, but I like the Deacons. And I mean, the only threat at all in this fight is the curse that comes up here in the second phase. But throw your alluring skulls and go to town, wail on the main Deacon, and yeah, it's easy. But I still have fun after these hundreds of hours fighting the Deacons. So this is where it is on the list. I like it. That's where it is. I actually really like Crystal Sage. I think it's a unique and pretty cool spin on the idol boss from Demon Souls. I like it. When I first started playing Dark Souls 3, my first couple of runs, I didn't know. I just didn't pick up on the fact that the real Sage had a different color of magic when she starts spawning in the clones. So it was actually much more difficult for me when I first started. Maybe I should admit that. Yeah, fuck it. I did it. I did it. I know now. I know better now. Crystal Sage is much more manageable these days. Now, there's a way to manipulate the Crystal Sage's magic if you're trying to either make it easier or do a no-hit run to catch her in a loop. I don't do that. I don't care. I don't care. But I think Crystal Sage is appropriately placed on this list, I think. And right here, you see, start to make a series of bad decisions. Don't do this. Manage your greed when you play Dark Souls. Don't do this. Manage your greed. Don't be greedy. Don't be stupid. But we get her. And yeah, I really like Crystal Sage, and I always have fun with this boss. Crystal Sage is pretty cool. Pretty cool. It might seem odd having Curse-Rotted Greatwood anywhere other than maybe like the bottom two, but I have to be honest. I really like this boss in Dark Souls 3. I like Curse-Rotted Greatwood. I think it's incredibly gross. I like the visual presentation. I think it makes an impact, or at least it certainly did to me the first time I played Dark Souls 3, and continues to do so. I really love the way that it looks. Now watch this display of skill. Yeah. Gee. Yeah, maybe it was a bad idea doing these ranking videos and showing just how embarrassingly bad I can be at these fucking games sometimes. Alright. Anyway, moving on. Anyway. Curse-Rotted Greatwood is sort of my cleric beast, I think, in Dark Souls 3. I save Curse-Rotted Greatwood to the very end to just run back and clean it up. But yeah, I really like the design of Curse-Rotted Greatwood. I think that it's interesting. I think it's unique in the Souls games, and that's really what stands out to me and why I put it so high on this list. The run up to Aldridge on the first playthrough was incredibly nostalgic and cool, going through Anor Londo, going to the steps to see the dead giant, coming into the very familiar arena to see Aldridge, who resembles Gwendolyn. All that was really cool for the sake of nostalgia, but to some degree, I think that kind of also works against it, making it feel like Dark Souls 3 doesn't have its own identity. But maybe you feel like that's an unfair criticism, and I really wouldn't say that you were wrong there. As a boss, Aldridge has a very visually compelling moveset. I think Aldridge is very balanced. The tracking of the arrows in the second phase can be kind of a bitch, but Aldridge is cool. One thing that I thought would have been very interesting for Aldridge as the Devourer of Gods is to not just see a phase of Gwendolyn, but maybe to go into a second phase resembling maybe another boss from Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 2 or something like that. But what we got, I actually think is just fine. I do have fun fighting Aldridge. So call me crazy, call me stupid, I don't care. I really like Yorm. I do. I think the presentation is cool. I love the look of Yorm. And to put it into some sort of context, the King of Storms boss in Demon Souls, one of my favorite bosses in that game, especially in the remake, it's beautiful. So I really, really liked the callback here and the use of the Storm Ruler. I thought it was really nice. That said, I think similar to Dragon God in Demon Souls, when we're introduced to Yorm in the opening cutscene, my expectation was, oh, it's going to be a big-ass giant. It's going to be an epic-ass battle. It's going to be awesome. And ultimately, that's just not what it was. And fairly or unfairly, saying I had expectations. It's my fault for having expectations. But it just ended up feeling and coming across as very underwhelming. Of all the things that have been done consistently well in every Souls game, one of them has to be the strength of the tutorial boss, the first boss in the game. They've all been incredible. Elden Ring, okay, no, fuck it, I'm sticking with it. They've all been great. They've all been amazing. And I think Gundyr is maybe one of the best. I love the design of it. Obviously, is really cool. I love his look. And Champion Gundyr is a little better, but that's all right. The one thing that I can say, I have never gotten sick of fighting Gundyr. However many hundreds of hours I put into Dark Souls 3, my thoughts on Dark Souls 3 aside, I've never gotten tired of fighting Gundyr. He's always been strong and always been fun. And that's saying something, considering how many times you actually have to deal with Gundyr if you put in the amount of hours that some of us have. And I love how he introduces you to the various games. It's just done so well. And I think Gundyr is deserving of a rank this high. And get wrecked. Look. Continuing the trend of making myself look like a shit player on the internet. There are times I will go through stretches of time where I can parry Pontiff consistently, and then I'll go through times where I just can't do shit. Look, I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of fun fighting Pontiff. However, I think I have to recognize that in Dark Souls 3, he's one of the strongest bosses. I mean, visually, he's very stunning. His moveset is incredible. He's very aggressive. He's very threatening. I think he's one of the bosses in Dark Souls 3 that really get the anxiety up, really get the hands a sweating, we'll say. And the phase change, his second phase, is so brilliantly designed, I think. It's so cool. It's such a great idea to have, like, the Shadow Pontiff. And I recognize that Pontiff in this game is an incredibly well-designed boss. I don't think that he's overly difficult, even without pairing. I think he's very fair and balanced and leaves himself open for punishment at appropriate times. So, I think Pontiff deserves a spot high up on the list, even if I admit at the same time that I really don't have a lot of fun fighting him. But I do think he's a great boss overall. I really, really like Dragonslayer. You know what? No, I love Dragonslayer. God damn it, I do. I love the design. I love how aggressive he is. I love his moveset, how powerful and strong. I like the look, at least the visual connection to Ornstein. I like the arena. I really like the pilgrim butterflies in the background. I think their design is incredibly creepy and adds to the overall atmosphere, and the connection that the pilgrim butterflies have to Dragonslayer. I think all of that is really cool. I don't like how the pilgrim butterflies start throwing in attacks in the second phase. I think it takes away from the experience of what I think is a really, really great boss. What frustrates me about Dragonslayer armor is that I love it so much that I wish they had done more with it, and not just throw him in the sea of crap at the end of the Ring City. I wish that we had seen more of Dragonslayer, and that he was just a bigger boss and more of a threat in Dark Souls 3, because I just like it that much, and I look forward to fighting Dragonslayer on every run that I do of Dark Souls 3. So similar to the Shadows in Bloodborne, Abyss Watchers is a boss that I grew to love over time. I did not like Abyss Watchers when I first started playing Dark Souls 3, but now I have a lot of fun. If I have any complaint, it's that it's really easy to get behind him to get a riposte in. And I'm not going to say that trivializes the boss, but I think it makes it easier than maybe it should have been. That said, I do think Abyss Watchers is a really great skill check. This early in the game, I think that it's a great first Lord of Cinder to fight. I like the callback to some degree of Artorias, and I like the rhythm of it, the fluidity, the sword play, the multiple phases. I think it's all really cool, and I think pretty appropriately placed on this list for what it is. I really like Abyss Watchers. So this might be a bit of an odd opinion coming in, maybe, but depending on how you choose to play Dark Souls 3, the pathing that you choose, you could do Dancer very early, or you can do Dancer as the game progresses, and you do the Lords of Cinder, and then you're pushed into the Dancer fight. If you go that route, if you do Dancer later after the Lords of Cinder, and this is just my my opinion, I think Dancer is the first great boss, really, that you fight in Dark Souls 3, and it's so late in the game. Um, but this is just my opinion. I think Dancer is the first really great boss outside of Gundyr, who is the tutorial boss that you fight in Dark Souls 3. Her fluidity, the way that she moves, it's so smooth and it's so elegant. It's so dangerous. She hits very hard, and if you get caught up in the combination of her swipes, similar to Soul of Cinder, you might be mildly fucked. But I really really love Dancer, and it reminds me, and maybe somebody can figure this out for me, but it really reminds me of a Bloodborne boss to some degree. But overall, I think Dancer is one of the best bosses in Dark Souls 3, perfectly placed as a challenge and as the wall between the player and Lothric. I fucking hated fucking demons the first time that I fought them in the DLC. To be fair, I think the first time I did the Ring City DLC, I might have been in like New Game 6 or something like that, and I got fucking stomped left and right. I've gotten better, though. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but I've gotten better. What I really, really like about this boss is the introduction of something new. Depending on which demon you beat will determine which demon prince you get, either demon of pain or demon from below. I think that it's very interesting. I don't know that it matters much unless you're trying to do a very specific kind of run. But overall, I think that this is one of the most visually interesting bosses in the DLC, and certainly one of the most interesting mechanically. And I really appreciate that. And I always have a lot of fun fighting the Demon Prince. I don't think it's one of the best bosses, but I think it's incredibly solid. I think it's very fun, and I always look forward to it. The first few times I played Dark Souls 3, I would say the Twin Princes were easily the hardest boss for me and the one that took the longest to figure out. Now you might say, given how jacked up I'm getting, that I haven't figured it out. I promise I am better at this fight than what you are seeing here. I just had a bad day. You can believe that or not, that's fine. Maybe I'm just making excuses. Whatever. Anyway, to me, the Twin Princes, easily one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 3, and visually one of my favorites that they've ever designed. I think coming into it and hearing Lothric speak, and then having Lorien come down and being not able to walk, and then Lothric comes down unable to walk, and they're relying on each other to try and best the Ashen One. There is something so tragic about it. That is, again, what FromSoft can do is they can make one of these bosses without any real presentation of lore seem so emotional, from the score to the dialogue, and here I think it all works perfectly. Absolutely, Twin Prince is one of my favorites in Dark Souls 3. Easily one of my favorite bosses in this whole game. I love it. When we first meet Gundyr in the tutorial, Gundyr is saying, "Let me show you what's about to happen." And you're both at your weakest points. And by the time you find Champion Gundyr, he's saying, "Show me what you've learned." I love it. I love it. I love it. And this theme of Dark Souls 3 of things coming full circle, I think is so perfectly expressed in this whole ass boss. I love it. Now, if you can parry Gundyr, it does make it a bit easier. Bang. But I don't think it takes away from just how masterfully this was handled and how beautiful the fight is. I love fighting Champion Gundyr. I do. I love it. From False King Allant to Gwyn to Sword Saint to Gehrman to Radagon and Elden Beast. Not at all Nashandra. No, not Nashandra. But FromSoft knows how to end a fucking game, and Soul of Cinder is so perfect. It is such a brilliant idea to have Soul of Cinder be a collection of those who linked the flame. It's so good. It's so balanced. His moveset, the way that he changes up weapons, use spells, and the second phase, oh shit, is so perfect and nostalgic in all the right ways. In all the right ways for me. It's so good. And similar to Maria, I'll do a whole ass run of Dark Souls 3 just to fight Soul of Cinder. And to me, I think that that's how I really know that a boss is great. That I think a boss is great. When I'll go into it and I'll do the whole thing just so I can experience this boss again. I love Soul of Cinder. Easily, to me, one of the best in Dark Souls 3. Never gonna change. Before I had even played Dark Souls 3, I had seen like a video or something about Nameless King, and I remember thinking, holy shit, this is gonna be difficult. So the first time I actually fought him, I went into it sort of already intimidated, and he was already in my head. And it took me a minute to figure out Nameless King. And opening with the King of the Storm, I think is actually a really cool idea. Not just for the spectacle, but as an Estus check. Because if you suck against King of the Storm and you're just chugging Estus, you're going to have a shit time for what happens next. But King of the Storm is really just about getting your dodges down, which I can't say I'm perfect at all the time. Smacking his head and getting the riposte, and then it's over. Once you do that, then you get into the actual boss fight with Nameless King, which is fucking amazing. I love Nameless King, not just one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 3, but I think one of their best designs in all of Souls. And something that I absolutely love that they did with Nameless King was mix up his rhythm. Throughout the course of the game, I think a lot of players, myself included in that, are sort of used to dodging at certain times. And Nameless King messes with that, where there's sort of like an extra beat in there, where you have to wait on the wind-up and then dodge, which I thought was so cool. And they really doubled down on that, I think, with Elden Ring, where the bosses have long wind-ups with odd timings followed by super aggression, which I don't know how much I love it in Elden Ring, but talk about Elden Ring at another time, I think. But certainly Nameless King, easily one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 3, and I think one of the best bosses that FromSoft has ever designed. I love it. So, if I was doing a ranking of the hardest bosses in Dark Souls 3, there's no fucking question that Fried would be number one. She was my hardest boss in just all of Souls until this one came along. And to this day, I mean, other than Melania, she's still, I think, maybe the hardest boss for me. Maybe Malekith. I haven't really figured Malekith out yet, but whatever. But that said, in the first phase, as you saw, I go after lots of parries to deal with her. And then in the second phase, it's just about smacking Father Ariandel. And what I really like about what they did here so perfectly is they balanced the aggression. So while you're dealing with Father Ariandel, Fried kind of hangs back. I mean, she does send out, this. And she'll try to heal them both. But they dialed back her aggression. So they really balanced that out. And in the first phase, she's kind of passive. She can be a little aggressive. And then in the third phase, she's like, oh, okay, you wanted me? Well, bitch, here I am. Here's Fried in the last phase. Holy shit. She becomes so aggressive. So aggressive. Aggressive to the point that it doesn't even sometimes feel like a Dark Souls 3 boss. But it's so wonderfully designed, I think. And in the third phase, I really just try to go after backstabs. That's my whole ass strategy. But Fried, I think, is amazing. Love Fried. FromSoft has a history of giving us dragon bosses. From the great to the epic to the crap that I fucking hate. Ugh. And I think of all of them, Placidusax included, Midir is still my favorite dragon fight that they've given us. And one of my favorite bosses, really not just in Dark Souls 3, but in all of Souls. I love fighting Midir. I think it's so fun. I think it's so well balanced. It's such a challenge, but it's not unfair. I love the presentation. All of it to me is just top of the line, and I always have fun fighting Midir. Even when I'm getting jacked up, it's not going perfectly, I still have fun fighting Midir. And every time I play DS3, I look forward to this. And it's only gotten better for me over time. So Midir, absolutely at the top of the list. We come to the end of the Ringed City DLC. The end of the journey of 3 Dark Souls games. And we walk across this barren wasteland, this absolute desolate remnants of a world left behind. And we walk into this broken down area to find the Eater of the Dark Soul, Gale. Holy shit! I can't imagine a better way to end Souls than with this absolutely epic encounter. It's perfect to me. Not just the design of Gale and the way that Gale fights, but it's the environment, it's the score, it's the whole thing coming together. And something that I really love and appreciate that they did with Gale is they kind of doubled down to some degree on what they did in Bloodborne, where you want a final boss. Okay, here's fucking Orphan. Here you go. Here's Orphan. And Gale has the aggression and the strength and the challenge of Orphan, I think, while having that build and that climb and that crescendo that Maria had. So to me, it's this perfect combination of things escalating and becoming more threatening, more visually stunning, with his cape, with the lightning, the environment changing, becoming more dark, more ominous, and then his moveset becoming more erratic and somewhat more unpredictable. I love it. I really do. And I can't imagine there being a better boss to end these Souls games, if in fact it is the end. I love Gale. Absolutely number 1, top of the list. I think it's only fitting to visually end where it all begins, given the nature of Dark Souls. It's, once again, I think it's so fun putting all of this together and talking about some of my favorite games. Dark Souls 3, even if I say that it's one of my least favorite Souls games, it's still one of my favorite games. You know what I mean? I think it's beautiful, I think it's amazing, and even though I have issues with some of the bosses, I still return to Dark Souls 3 to play it time and time again. I love it. But what do you think? What do you think about Dark Souls 3? Where do you place it if you had to rank the Dark Souls games? Where do you put Dark Souls 3, considering everything, boss quality, lore, all of it? What are your thoughts on Dark Souls 3 overall?